Hello and welcome back to Cape Corner, where we explore the history, story, and cultural impact of a different character or group every episode. I'm Blue, and today I'm joined by special guest Scotty,
Hello, listeners.
which is usually just you. You get to listen to yourself
Yes,
this week.
yes, yeah.
There's no
I
shame in that.
guess does Jordan actually? Yeah, I guess does Jordan actually listen, or is he just? I guess, or do you even
He's
know?
such a fake friend. He does not listen to my show. No, I'm kidding. He's great. But now the great part is if he does listen to this episode, he gets to go, actually at me.
Yeah, I think now Podbean actually lets you comment on episodes. So
Oh, yeah. Now I can get a strongly worded letter from him. No, I won't. He's too nice to do that. But
he's
yeah.
too friendly and too. Yeah, yeah.
So you brought up something to me that I've been making a slight error the last couple times really I've been talking about this. Is that whenever I try and bring up that there's a suggestion channel in the Discord, people can suggest episodes. I try and do
Hmm.
them. I usually say, unless it's a topic I know nothing about, and you brought up, you never actually
Hmm.
recommended that I do a G.I. Joe episode. You recommended the Space Knight guy,
Yes,
whose name I forgot because I'm really good at this.
yeah. Rom the Space Knight, which in the yeah. Yeah, which is another Hasbro property with Transformers and G.I. Joe.
Have they done crossovers?
Yes, back in the late 2010s, IDW did this whole Hasbroverse, where it was Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Mask, Micronauts, all in the same universe. And that lasted up until like 2019.
I do seem to
So,
remember seeing like comic book pages of like the G.I. Joe characters talking to Optimus Prime and stuff. So,
yes. Well, also now Image Comics, Skybound picked up the pet tab on G.I. Joe Transformers, and Robert Kirkman has built this Energon universe, which is so far an actually better version of the Hasbroverse IDW did, which includes Robert Kirkman's title, Void Rivals, and then a new Transformers comic by Daniel Warren Johnson, and Joshua Williamson is doing the G.I. Joe comic.
okay, cool.
And leading into the G.I. Joe comic, Joshua Williamson did a Duke and Cobra Commander comic, and Kelly Thompson did a Scarlet comic, and Dan Waters did a Destro comic, and those were all to set up the G.I. Joe comic, which, funny enough, the setup started in Transformers #2 when Duke kills Frost, Starscream kills Frosting in front of Duke, and he has like PTSD in the Duke series from experiencing a Transformer clap a human being in his hands.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Okay. Well,
yes,
that's heavy. I will say we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit, so we should
yeah.
probably
Let's dial it back and
um,
get into like the origins of.
let me
But
ask you
I think it.
real quick. Before we start recording, you said you went outside because there's a bird that is going off right.
Oh yeah, yeah. My mom has a. Let me see if just go into my kitchen. Yeah, my mom has bird feeders. I'm pet sitting. So I
Okay, I
went to
got
get my yeah, and I'm also making sure the construction guys don't fuck up her bathroom. But
I
so
got
far
you.
they've been doing a good job. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's good. All right, so yes, today we are talking about GI Joe. I'll say I I'm not like 100% ignorant on this series. I have brief like little I lived in the 90s, right? So it's not like I never
Hmm.
experienced anything. I
You
saw
experienced GI Joe Extreme. That's for Joe Slepsky.
I saw, like little bits and pieces of the show. I think I actually saw the entire episode one day when I was staying over at my dad's house. I was in his girlfriend's daughter's room and I was watching an episode and I was just like, I have no clue who any of these people are. But there was like a diver guy with a black mustache who he was like a really snarky, jokestery kind of guy, and it was a whole Navy episode or something. Um, But yeah, I know Duke is like the guy. He is the GI Joe. I know, of course, Cobra Commander, Cobra, all that stuff.
Yes,
I know
voiced
Destro.
by. hmm
What is the Baroness, right? The hot one.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, the hot one with glasses, the black-haired one.
Yeah. Oh God.
Scarlet is the red hot. Scarlet's the redhead on the GI Joe side.
You know what's really funny is that I feel like those glasses like complete the design. Like she would just be like some sort of cheap like I almost said Scarlet Witch, no, what Black Widow esque knockoff. But then you put the glasses on and you're just like, oh,
Mhm.
perfection, peak, yes.
Yes. Well,
Uh,
it's funny because the live action movies gives an all black costume. It's like, so she looks like a low rent Black Widow with a crossbow when she normally has a like yellow and blue outfit that has more personality. But the first live action movie was in that like X-Men Bryan Singer era where it's like, we
where
can't
they wear
have these
different
comic
colors.
accurate. Yes, yes. They all wear all black costumes. Snake Eyes has fake lips on his mask.
It's great.
Yeah,
Um,
that's,
okay, and the only other characters that I really know of are Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, the ninjas. Um, aside
yes,
from that,
well,
I
yes.
never, I never really had any of the toys. I didn't watch the
hmm
show. And I, uh, I wouldn't go as so far as to say like I was anti-military when I was a little kid. That didn't really
hmm
start happening until I was like in high school, and people were like, are you going to go to the GR or OTC, or are you going to
hmm
are you planning on enlisting out of high school? And I was just like, man, I don't want to die to fight someone else's battles, and that's when I started thinking about military stuff more. But I'll say like army stuff was never really my thing, even before I was like conscientious objector level. So I gravitated more towards Transformers because it's like, hey, these are cool
Yes,
robot guys with laser guns, and um,
yes. It's a war between giant robots as opposed to a top secret covert, basically SHIELD team versus Hydra.
yeah, it's funny. It feels like there are certain properties from the 80s and 90s that are like that are like pairs, like a symbiote circle type thing, and I would tend to gravitate
Yeah.
towards one but not the other. I was more into
Mhm.
Thundercats, but I wasn't into He-Man. I was more into
Well, yeah.
Transformers, but I wasn't into GI Joe, that sort of thing.
Yes. I guess Star Wars and Indiana Jones also kind of fit into that
Yeah, well,
sort
you
of
know what? Same
pair.
deal. I was into Star Wars, and I wasn't into Indiana Jones. So
Yes. Well, it's also like the dynamic between G.I. Joe and Transformers is like Transformers is Hasbro's baby. They'll pour countless amounts of dollars into that, much like Lucasfilms does with Star Wars. But then it's like G.I. Joe gets breadcrumbs, much like Indiana Jones. Granted, I think Hasbro does more for G.I. Joe than LucasArts ever does for Indiana Jones. So,
yeah. All right. So I think what I'd like to do here. So I have a basic understanding, but
mm,
because there's easily stuff that I could be missing, can you tell
mm.
me like I'm little kindergarten baby child, like just explain the basics and the premise of the series.
So you want me to go into like the sort of formation of the IPs before actually going into the lore, or
I
do you
do
care?
I do tend to say that I do real world history in the show as well whenever I can. So if you know
Yes.
about that, that would be lovely.
Yeah. So G.I. Joe, it is owned by Hasbro. And the weird thing is, it's one of those few properties that I can think of that has like two anniversaries. That last year was the 60th anniversary, and then 2022 was the 40-year anniversary. Reason being, back in 1964, the actual G.I. Joe toy, which was effectively Barbie for boys, it was a 12-inch figure, offered much more articulation than the Barbie doll offered because you got to sell it to boys action figures. They were all much like the Barbie doll and the Ken doll. all the Barbies and Kens are named Barbie and Ken. So all the G.I. Joe figures in the 60s were G.I. Joe. It was
They were
Land Adventure yes,
so
Land
wait,
Adventure G.I.
is that why their organization is called GI Joes? Because they were initially all
Yes.
GIs called Joe.
So I'll get to that, but yeah, that's
Okay.
effectively sort of like the origin of it. It's like, and also GI Joe is a slang to refer to run of the mill soldiers. It's like you're,
Oh,
don't mind asking.
okay. Sorry, you cut out for a little bit there. What was that?
Do you know what GI stands for, or do you want me to
It's
tell you?
uh, General Infantry. Is that right?
It, they're actually it's three things. So there's general issue, government issue, and then there's ground infantry. So when people are talking about a GI Joe, they're typically talking about a ground infantry man, whereas like government issue and general issue are more for laws like the GI Bill.
Okay.
So and yeah. So that's where it like started, and then in like the 70s, because of like public opinion has sort of turned anti-military, G.I. Joe became part of a team of superheroes, and he was treated like a superhero soldier, like Captain America or Brit from Invincible, if you saw the last episode. So he led this team of superheroes called the Adventure Team, which included G.I. Joe, the Bullet Man, and the Atomic Man, which was sort of like Hasbro's spin on the $1 million man. Yeah, no, $6 million man. That's what Atomic Man was. And
Yeah.
so it was this team of superheroes. And because you couldn't, I think there was like a law passed in the 70s, you couldn't like do blatant toy commercials. They had started taking out comic book ads that were like these mini comics you'd find. And like, I think the first one was in an issue of Daredevil, which was G.I. Joe meets the Atomic Man. And it was like G.I. Joe recruiting the Atomic Man into his adventure team to save the world from extraterrestrial threats. And then later in the 70s, G.I. Joe got rebranded as Super Joe to piggyback off of Star Wars, which took a much more sci-fi angle. And so that's sort of like much of the toy history before we get into 1982 when the comic comes about and the toy basically is completely rebranded to synergize with the comic. And basically after Empire Strikes Back, the toy industry largely with Kenner, went from the 12-inch G.I. Joes and the Mego figures, which were like your superhero action figures prior to the 1980s, which were 12-inch, basically Barbie dolls, but it was like Batman, Spock, Luke Skywalker, G.I. Joe style action figures with characters like that. So in the 1980s, the toy industry went from 12-inch to 3/4 inch, so you could fit like your Batman action figure in a Batmobile and not have it take up a large chunk of the room. So you could also have like a Joker mobile. So in the 1980s, Hasbro was looking for a way to rebrand G.I. Joe to compete with like Star Wars because it had the X-Wings and the TIE Fighters to incorporate vehicles. And around that same time, Larry Hama was pitching a comic to Marvel called Fury Force, which would follow Nick Fury's son and a team of like superhero shield agents who fought Hydra, which is largely why Cobra is so much in common with Hydra. I mean, the Baroness is basically Madame Hydra, which
Right.
was, she was actually,
I was gonna draw that parallel.
yes, yes, she was actually a creation for the comic. She wasn't even a toy yet. And her popularity in the comic and later the cartoon sort of led to Hasbro's like, all right, we'll make her a toy. Like they had like, because prior to the 1980s, it was basically all guys. All the G.I. Joes were variants of G.I. Joe himself. There was like the Land Adventurer was I think the typical G.I. Joe action figure. I think the Arctic Adventure was like a red-haired G.I. Joe. And then, I think the Sea Adventure was like a black G.I. Joe. I could be getting those wrong, but you get the idea.
I gotta say,
Yeah. And so,
I'm now really glad that I asked you for some preamble.
Yes.
I did not know any of this shit. I didn't know that it's been around since
Yes.
the 60s. I didn't know that there was
Yes.
like a Defenders of the Earth style, which I don't know if you know
Yes.
about that. You know about Defenders of the Earth?
Vaguely. It's
It's
rings
like
a bell. Let me put it out.
they had the some old pulp superheroes like the Phantom, and
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they decided to put
Yeah, I
him
think Dynamite.
in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dynamite did something more recently that was called Mask, which was the Black Bat, which is where both Daredevil and Batman effectively come from. The Shadow, the Green Hornet, and Zorro.
Wait, hold on. I sometimes get the Phantom and the Shadow. Okay, the Shadow is the guy that like what does he wear
He
again?
has I think it's like the red bandana over his mouth
Right.
and
Okay,
like
yeah.
a fedora.
He's got like the like bandana like tails like coming off the back of his head. Or wait, over
Yeah,
his.
yeah. Yeah, it's over his mouth.
I'm
It's
gonna
a
have to
red
look
like
that up after this.
band.
I remember the Phantom is the guy wearing the purple bodysuit, the morph suit.
Yes, yeah, yep, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But yes, please continue
hmm
with the G.I. Joe stuff.
So yeah, so basically Hasbro, after the success of the ROM comic, I should point this out, because ROM was comics, predated ROM. In like the late 1970s, Parker Bros. Had come to Marvel because they had struck success with licensing Star Wars. It's like, hey, can you make our toy a comic so we can boost toy sales? And so that's what happened with ROM. And so Hasbro saw the success of the ROM comic and how it transformed the ROM toy line.
So wait, hang on. You said Parker Brothers. Isn't that the people that like made Monopoly and the board
Yes,
games?
yes, yes, which is
Okay.
now owned by Hasbro. But like ROM was like their action figure line. And it was, some of it was like to piggyback off the success of Star Wars.
Okay.
Because, after 19, yeah. So ROM was like the first like toy line to get its full, at least to my knowledge, to get its full-fledged comic, not just bonus comic ads you'd see in the comics,
Mhm.
whatever comic you're picking up. So in 1982, around this time, Hasbro caught wind that Larry Hama was doing a comic called Fury Force, or was going to. It didn't come to fruition. And so
Can
they
I ask
basically
you a
came to
question?
Marvel. hmm
Um, when he was pitching the idea for a comic about Nick Fury's son, was Nick
hmm
Fury's son already a character? Because Nick Fury does have a son, also called
Yeah,
Nick
no,
Fury.
no. Yeah, no, it wasn't a character yet. He was
Okay,
sort
so
of like,
this was going to be
yeah,
like a
well before the
Sherry
actual,
Jones type of situation where they're like, we're going to invent
yeah.
a family member.
hmm Yeah, it was, I think part of it was he wanted to like create a new character to basically as like a vehicle for some of his experience because Larry Hama fought in the Vietnam War. And so one of the reasons why he wanted to do a comic like that was to actually write about his experiences as a military man. And so he sort of talked about this where it's like he didn't want G.I. Joe to be something like Call of Duty where it's like rah rah America rules, rah rah that. He wanted it to be more nuanced and actually convey like more tough stories about war. Like it's not all glorious. And so when
That sounds,
Hasbro intervened,
that sounds
mhm,
weirdly similar to Tolkien and his
yeah,
whole thing where he was like,
yeah,
I want to make a story that draws parallels to my time in war, but talks about how much it sucked.
yes, yes. It's like, it's, and so Hasbro basically came in and it's like, can you make your Fury Force comic G.I. Joe a real American hero? And Rod Rudat sort of like provided a lot of the character designs for the G.I. Joe characters to Larry Hama. It's like, make these comic book characters so we can then sell their toys. And
That's gotta
so Larry
suck
Hama,
because he was wanting to make a more
mhm,
critiqued and nuanced story, and instead they were like, "Well, you are actually going to make chest thumping, red blooded Americans and talk
well,
about how
no,
war is awesome."
well, it's actually, the comic is actually, it's still actually more nuanced because one of
Is
the
it?
things in actually the final, yeah, in the final issue, Sean Collins, who's the son of Wade Collins, who was one of Snake Eye's friends in the military. So it is like, I want to join the war, the military, and become glorious. It's like, no, that's not a reason to actually enlist. What you wanted, because people who enlist with that kind of motivation are the first to die in war.
Yeah.
Like Tommy Storm Shadow enlisted to bring honor to his family name. Stalker enlisted because of racism in the Deep South and wanted to prove that black people could fight and serve their country and be just as patriotic as whites. And so Snake Eyes is basically writing like, just enlisting because it's cool is not a reason to enlist in the war. And so, and so that's why, so Larry Hama was still able to get that through, but there were like editorial changes to the comic. Like just a couple years ago, Skybound and Image released the Hama cut of G.I. Joe 1, where Hawk, in the comic, he says, "We're soldiers. Our job is to do the impossible and be forgotten." And then Marvel changed it to, "We're soldiers. Our job is to do the impossible and make it look easy." And so for the
Oh,
longest period of time, that
that's not
version of
hard
G.I.
hitting.
Joe, yes, yes, that version of G.I. Joe #1 was the version people got. And then in 2023, because Skybound is an Image studio, they're like, we want to respect the creator's actual vision for this. So they released the Hama cut. So we'd get the unedited version of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue
That
#1.
that's pretty cool. I will say what I was
Mm.
basing my assumption off of is the show. Again, just
Yes,
the like toy commercials and the little bits of the TV show I've
yes.
seen are very much like, yeah,
Mm.
war is the coolest thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's also, they're fighting with laser guns, and sometimes
Yeah.
there'll be like a magic conch shell where the Baroness will blow into it, and it will hypnotize all the male Joes. It's like
Wait,
the
is that
women on the
real?
G.I. Joe. Yes, that's an actual episode of, yes. And Morgan Lofting who was the voice of the Baroness, was on the Joe on Joe podcast to review that episode. And so, which she tragically passed away recently, but
Oh.
in that episode, the Baroness gets a magic conch shell to hypnotize basically all the men on the G.I. Joe team. And so Scarlet, Lady J, and CoverGirl have to problem solve to stop the Baroness's plot.
Okay, I gotta say real quick, I want to use that to
Mhm.
go off on this tangent. I don't actually know if you've seen Young Justice or anything like that, but
Yes,
there's one bit of Young
I
Justice
have seen.
that frustrates me because it's like uh, there's an episode where Nightwing sends an all-girl squad into Bialia, and he's like,
Mm,
"Yeah, you might encounter Queen Bee, which is why I didn't put any men on the squad because she has the power to hypnotize men." So like, uh, and then Batgirl is like, "Would you have felt the need to justify an all-male squad?" And I just remember being like, "Yeah." If there was someone with the power to hypnotize women, yes, I would say, hey, I'm making a team of specifically only men. So
mm.
it's not a sexism thing. But it sounds like they almost got inspiration from that story from GI
Well,
Joe.
yes,
So like
yes.
we need to
Well,
make a commentary on it.
yeah. Well, the thing is, that episode reminds me of Fury from, you've seen Justice League, right?
The 2005 cartoon, yeah, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
2003, I guess it
You,
was. But yes,
Yeah, well, I guess what 2004 to 2005 was Justice League, and then after that was Justice League Unlimited.
yeah, I think Unlimited was 2005 is why I pulled that
Yeah,
number
yeah,
out. But yeah,
yeah, yeah. Well, you you've seen the episode Fury where Aricia sort of unleashes a toxin that infects all the men in the world and basically incapacitates all the men in the Justice
I seem to recall it. I will say it's been a while since I've like watched every episode, but
League.
I do seem to remember an episode where it was like Wonder Woman and Hawkgirl had to.
Yeah, and Hawkgirl's like, that backwards ideology the Amazons preach is what led Aricia to do this.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay, I do remember that. I remember because I always thought it was like, okay, so Wonder Woman is supposedly feminist, but a lot of the shit she says is just straight up misandrist. And I
Hmm.
remember Hawkgirl being like, guys aren't really that bad, right? And Wonder Woman just being like
Hmm.
hardcore anti-man, and Hawkgirl eventually being like, yo, shut up.
Yes, yes. Obviously, because it was the 80s, they didn't go that route. Also, none of the women on the GI Joe are misandrous, at least not to my knowledge.
Well, that's
But it's
good.
like yeah, the big three, Scarlet, Lady J, and CoverGirl, are sort of like the women on the GI Joe side that people are going to know, particularly Scarlet because that's the redhead. She's Snake Eyes' love interest, which in the comic they paired her with Duke because Snake Eyes doesn't speak. He also had, I mean, not the comic, the cartoon. They paired her with Duke because Snake Eyes doesn't speak, so Scarlet's voice actor needed a man voice actor to romanticize with. Also, Snake Eyes has an all black costume, and in the 80s, it was really difficult to animate all black characters. That's also why the cartoon made more of a rival for Storm Shadow than Snake Eyes, was because it
Okay,
was hard
so
to animate.
the recording cut out right when you said that's why they also made.
Oh, Spirit Arrival for Snake Eyes.
Okay,
And he's a Native American on the G.I. Joe team. He kind of reminds me of the Apache Chief, but he has a more like less of a stereotypical look. There's still some, like he still has a feather. Like when Josh Blaylock did the 2000s G.I. Joe comic, he gave Spirit an all black costume and sort of took away some of like the more stereotypical Native American elements to his look.
okay.
But it was the 80s and the Apache Chief was also a product of that time. So it's like, we've
Yeah.
well moved past that. So
You
we're
you
better.
don't look at old '80s properties trying to
Mm,
find perfectly nuanced.
yes. Yeah, yeah.
You know in that
Exactly.
culture there's going to be some stereotypes. You just gotta roll with it.
Yes. Yes. But let's see. Back to sort of the history. So where were we went on such a but
Welcome to the
basically the
podcast, bro.
team.
That's what we do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny because when I was on The Boys with Jordan for Fandom Optimus, we went on all kinds of tangents. But
I'm sure.
well, yeah. So G.I. Joe #1 hits comic stores in 1982 and is an instant hit. And it lasts, the Marvel run went 155 issues until 95, until basically that's when Marvel lost the G.I. Joe license because they were filing for bankruptcy. And so companies like Hasbro and Lucasfilms didn't want to continue licensing with Marvel because they were in such a financial strap. Also, Marvel Productions went out of business in, I think, the late 1980s, which the original Transformers and G.I. Joe cartoons were made by Marvel Productions with Sunbow Productions. So that's why if you look at some of those old cartoons, the Transformers and G.I. Joe cartoon, you can sort of notice some of the similarities in the character models with like something like Spider-Man and his Amazing Friends, because those were all Marvel cartoons.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so the cartoon debuts in 1983, so basically a full year after the comic. And the Real American Hero toy line had dominated the toy market. And so the original, basically in the first issue, we were introduced to a team of 13 superhero soldiers is basically what the G.I. Joes are. They're led by Lieutenant Commander Hawk, Secret Identity, Clayton Abernathy, and it includes Soccer, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, Breaker, Clutch, Rock and Roll, Steeler, Flash, and yeah, I was thinking Bazooka, but he's a character that's introduced later on. Oh, Short Fuse is the character I was thinking of. But that was the original G.I. Joe. And they were commanded by General Lawrence Flagg, who's basically a Nick Fury, Professor X type character, where it's like, he's not on the front line so often. He's more so giving commands from the base, which was the pit at the time, which was an underground base in Utah, sort of like the Batcave meets Triskelion, which is Shield's base of operation, underground, and it has all these components where that's where like the GI Joe team would report for duty, and when they get a mission because Cobra was taking out, compromising New York, attacking New York, threatening to kill the mayor, they'd respond to the action.
Can
And also at this point, yeah,
can I just ask why Utah?
I don't know. I guess one of the things, yeah, I think Larry Hama was like looking for a place in the United States, I guess an open area because it's like the pit is sort of like, it's underneath like this building in a desert. So like from the outside, it's just this fenced off building. When you go inside, there's like an elevator that takes you to the underground space.
Okay, I
And
guess
so I've,
that does make sense if you're
yeah,
wanting like an
cause
area
I've,
51 style. Because I was going to say like
yeah, yeah,
there's nothing in Utah.
yeah, but it's like, it's to be inconspicuous, I think. And then, yeah. And so Lawrence Flagg, he's the director of the program, which as we learn, I think in issue like 80 of the comic, he's the successor to Joe Colton, who was G.I. Joe, going back, which was like an anniversary special for the 12-inch toy line, basically bringing that character into the Real American Hero continuity. And he would get his own O-ring figure shortly thereafter. And that's who Bruce Willis played in the second live action film, was G.I. Joe himself, Joe Colton. And so Flagg is sort of director of the program up until he's killed by Major Blood, who's a cyborg mercenary who works for Cobra. And then Hawk basically assumes Flagg's role, and that's when Duke and Roadblock come in, because Duke sort of takes Hawk's role, and Roadblock is like the second heavy machine gunner with rock and roll. And that's effectively where like the cartoon picks up in, is like Duke's leader of the team, Hawk is the commander from base. Granted, the cartoon follows a much different origin for Cobra, which, Cobra is one of those groups that has so many origins. Like, I should point this out, the 12-inch line in the UK and Europe was called Action Man because it was Paltoy, and it was doing G.I. Joe for Europe because G.I. Joe was an American military acronym. And so when the Real American Hero rebranding came about, Action Man was rebranded Action Force to be about a team of superhero soldiers in the UK who would fight the Red Shadows. And in the Action Force comics, Baron Ironblood was the leader of the Red Shadows with the Black Major as his second in command. And at some point, the Baron Ironblood turns on the Red Shadows and becomes Cobra Commander and forms Cobra, which that's the origin of Cobra in Action Force. Was Cobra Commander was another terrorist, Baron Ironblood, and he forms Cobra as his new organization because he doesn't want to work with the Red Shadows anymore. Also, Deathstroke was a Red Shadow in Action Force. He was Red Jackal, and then when he joined up with Cobra, he became Deathstroke. But in the American comics, a lot of that's not canon because there was a bit of a disconnect between HPC Comics and Marvel because Marvel UK didn't have the Action Force license because Palitoy wasn't part of Hasbro yet. Hasbro would go on to buy Palitoy, and then Marvel UK would publish Action Force in the late 80s. But that's all. I'm not as well versed in Action Force, one, because I'm an American, so there's only so much I can know about Action Force. And also, when Marvel did reprint the Marvel UK Action Force run in G.I. Joe European missions, it didn't last as long as the actual Action Force run from Marvel UK. So I've only seen like select issues of the Action Force comic, which in that, the character Flint, who is like second in command to Duke, is sort of the team leader in that run. And in the American comics, he's from Wichita, Kansas. In Action Force, he's from London, England. And his name is Dashiell Fairborn is his name. And in the UK comics, it's spelled differently than the US comics. But effectively the same character, just from a different country. Guy with the beret who's the knowing is half the battle. And all the G.I. Joe PSAs from the
Okay.
cartoon.
I did forget to mention that's the one other thing that I really knew about G.I. Joe is the PSAs that they had at the end of every episode where it's like, hey kids,
Yes.
remember, like, you gotta recycle, and then they do a little
Yes.
talk about why recycling is important, and then some kids would be like,
Yes.
I know, and knowing is half the battle.
Knowing is. Yes.
I
Yes.
also know that they parodied that for a couple seconds in Weezer's Pork and Beans video.
Yes. Yeah, they also parodied that in Family Guy, and they actually got Bill Ratner, who was the voice of Flint in the Marvel cartoon, to do Flint for that cutaway in Family Guy, where it's like, Chris Griffin, is that alcohol? And then Flint pops out of the custodial, it's like, remember kids, 3 out of 4 car accidents are caused by drunk drivers. Now we know, and knowing is half the battle.
I'll say, I'll give credit to Family Guy. It's pretty cool that they got the actual guy to do that instead of just having Seth Green do him.
Yes, or Seth MacFarlane.
Oh shit, you know what? I get the Seths mixed.
Well, they're both in Family Guy because Seth
Yeah,
is Peter Stewie and Chris is Seth Green, and they also do excess voices. Like I think Seth MacFarlane does Superman and Aquaman, and I think Seth Green is like Batman or something when they do cutaways.
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, so it was cool that for that they actually got a voice actor known for that role. I don't know if they ever got Frank Welker to do Megatron for any of their cutaways. Transformers cutaways. If that
I
was
do.
just,
This is sort of tangentially related because it's Seth Green. I do remember like
mm.
always being a little surprised when I found out that they got the actual voice actors to play their characters in like Robot Chicken. Um,
Oh yes, Mark Hamill was the Joker.
yeah, I think he was also
Yeah,
himself. I think last episode,
yeah.
I mentioned there was a Deep Impact skit where, no, I actually mentioned this on Phantom Optimist, the Brave New World episode, how,
Oh yeah,
uh,
I listened to that. Yeah.
yeah, how there's the Deep Impact skit where Han Solo, or fucking goddamn it, Harrison Ford is being called Han Solo, and then Mark Hamill's like, "Hey guys,
Mm.
I'm Luke Skywalker," and he's like, "That's just a movie."
Yes, yes. As Mark Hamill does a lot of stuff like that with like The Simpsons. I don't know if he's done Family Guy, where it's like, and so has Leonard Nimoy, where it's like they play themselves, so it's like you're Spock or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm just Leonard Nimoy.
Rest in
Which did you know that Leonard Nimoy was Galvatron in the '86 Transformers movie?
I do think I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I guess his schedule was too busy to do the cartoon, but he was Galvatron in the movie. And then for the cartoon following the movie, they just had Frank Welker, the OG Megatron, be Galvatron.
Now, see, I never really watched a lot of G1 Transformers, and as I
Hmm.
mentioned earlier, wasn't a big Star Trek guy. So the thing I actually recognize Leonard Nimoy for is, of course, Kingdom Hearts. Um,
Oh, yeah.
he voiced Master Xehanort. Master Xehanort is such a tough character because he's got 3 different voices. He was Leonard Nimoy, and then he was fuck, what's the guy? The Tears in the Rain, the Blade Runner
Oh,
villain,
God. Oh,
Wrecker
my
Hall.
gosh.
He was
Yeah,
Wrecker
yeah, yeah.
Hall, and now he's Doc Brown.
Oh, Christopher Lloyd,
Thank you.
right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, he's going to be at Planet Comic Con case Kansas City in March 21st to the 23rd because I'm seeing billboards for that. And he's one of the headlining events with Andy Serkis.
Oh, that's pretty cool. We
Yeah,
had
I went
one
last.
at Comic Con here recently with like all the 87 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles voice actors and like the guy who did
Oh,
Courage the Cowardly Dog and a bunch
hmm.
of people. So I really wanted to go. I wanted to meet Karen Ashley. She was Aisha, the second Yellow Power Ranger, but sadly I am poor, so I couldn't go.
Yeah, yeah. I went last year because, well, our Comic Con tickets are like $35. Obviously, you still got to put in extra cash for like autographs and interviews. But I got to meet Will Friedle, who is Terry McGinnis in Batman Beyond,
I was gonna say,
and
yeah,
I met
so cool.
yeah, and he's also Radiant Black. If you've seen
I was
Radiant
literally
Black
just about
versus
to
Red
say
Skull.
that. I was going to talk about Radiant Black because I started reading that
Yeah.
comic. I think last
Hmm.
year or the year before, something like that. And I remember the reason that I decided to start reading it is because I saw the animation on YouTube of him fighting the guy. I can't remember his name.
Blaze. Blaze.
Yeah, Blaze, that was it. Thank
His
you.
name is Blaze.
It's
Yeah.
like a little 4 minute animation, and they got Will Friedle
Mm.
to voice Radiant Black in that. And then I'm reading the comic, and then they're talking about. I finally had the context that that animation
Mm.
is
Yeah.
fictional, even in the fiction of Radiant Black. And it's like, yeah, you
Yeah.
got Will Friedle to voice you in the movie. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Yes. Yes. It's one of those like deep cuts like that I love about like something like Radiant Black, where it's like it foretells something like Ultimates kind of did that too, where it's like it foretold Samuel L. Jackson being Nick Fury, and
Right. Was Will Friedle, he was also Richie in Static Shock, wasn't he?
but yeah, I think let's see, back to GI Joe,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, basically once the cartoon and that era of the comics, things get really wacky, and also because that's when more ninjas come up. Because Storm Shadow came about in '83. Snake Eyes was prior to '83, he was just more of a commando, and then in the he gets rebranded as like a ninja, which that's where like the visor look that's most associated with that character. Because prior to that, he had like just a pair of goggles and an all black costume. He didn't speak. We get that sort of origin story specifically dive into some of those characters later in the episode. But that's also, I think it's '84 when the Dreadnoks come about, which is they're a group of mercenary bikers who drink soda pop because it's still a toy line comic, so they can't be drinking alcohol. But they're a group of mercenary bikers who wear like bright purple and blue outfits and sort of have like some of them are shirtless. So like Zartan's the most like noticeable one. He's the master of disguise, and he was
I
the
do,
central antagonist.
I do
Yeah.
think it's always really funny whenever they have to censor alcoholism with soda pop. They did the same thing in Punch Out. They changed a character who was billed as Vodka Drunkinski into Soda Popinski.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or they'll be like, oh, what they would do in anime a lot is for whatever reason, the thing they always went to was, I'm drinking hot sauce,
Yes.
which I feel like you guys could have done any actual drink other than going straight to whatever.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
When I think of drinking hot sauce, I think of the Condiment King in Batman the Animated Series, where he pulls out one of his like condiment packets, and it's hot sauce, and it falls in.
oh my god, I didn't realize that Condiment King is like eating the merch that like or sampling the merch.
Yes. Yeah, he has all the condiments on him: hot sauce, ketchup, mustard, barbecue sauce, mayonnaise.
Yeah, but I guess it just never occurred to me that like he wouldn't just attack people by spraying with them with ketchup. He might be like, I need a tasty treat.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, buddy, you're not allowed here. He opens like a hot sauce packet. It's like, oh, hot sauce.
God.
I think you haven't seen that episode of BTAS, or at least haven't seen it recently.
Oh man, you know what? I don't think I've ever watched all of Batman the Animated Series all the way through. It was one of those where I would catch episodes when it was on TV as a kid, and then like
Yeah.
I've been meaning to. Actually, just the other day, I was like, I should really try watching it all the way through because I'm planning on doing like a whole like Batman, Superman, Justice League, Static Shock, like that whole universe watch through.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Funny, like Jordan and I have been doing that Are you familiar with the Jump on the Batwagon podcast by
Yes,
chance?
he has told me quite a bit about it.
Yes, that's actually how I found out about Jordan's podcast. Was he does the musical minute on that, which is now an actual segment as opposed to just being something that would be played during the mail segment.
Oh,
But
that's cool.
that's how I yeah, that's how I discovered Jordan's podcast, and through Jordan's podcast, I discovered this one. So
Oh, I'm glad to be associated with such cool people.
yes,
I mean,
yes,
yeah, as
but they
indirectly as
do
it is.
yeah. But it Jump on the Batwagon is doing like a DCAU watch through in the air date order. So like not as they appear in most of the DVDs, but like as they were actually aired back in the 90s. So like Cat in the Claw Part 1 is broken up with like On Leather Wings and all these episodes between it. And then we go back to part 2 where it's like the DVDs, it's just Part 1, Part 2.
I've seen so many different orders like already, just because like okay, Blind Wave. The order they're using, they have the Cat in the Claw as the first episode, the first two episodes,
Yes.
and I've seen On Leather Wings as a first episode, but I swear years ago I saw Christmas with the Joker as the first episode. So
Well, yeah, I think it's like the season 1 box set has On Leather Wings as the first episode because that was the first episode produced. The Cat in the Claw Part 1 was the first episode aired. I think maybe one of those like Batman the Animated Series DVDs that's just like 5 episodes may have had Christmas with the Joker as the first one because I think it was like a Christmas special or something, or maybe it was the video cassettes. One of the two. But that's the second episode produced. And then it's aired way later, like,
hmm.
but yeah.
All right, but yes,
Okay.
legend.
Yeah, so the Dreadnoughts, they're a group of mercenary bikers who wear these bright costumes and they drink soda pop because of censors forbidding them from drinking alcohol. And they were first led by, I think, Torch, he used a blowtorch weapon, but then Zartan comes about as like the new leader. He's also the most popular member of the Dreadnoughts. And he was even the main antagonist of the second live action movie because in that, he's posing as the president, and as the president, he makes Cobra the United States' top military force, and basically tries to wipe out the Joes. Which I will say, I saw that in theaters, much better than Rise of Cobra. Still a bad movie, but it's like when the alternative is, did you know the Baroness was the Cobra Commander's brother, and that she had a relationship with Duke, and here's Ripcord hitting on Scarlet, being misogynistic and getting rewarded for it. It's like there's still a little bit of like mid 2000s misogyny, or I guess, in fact, how would I say it? Sexualization of women in the second one. Because there's a scene where Lady J's like in a jog bra trying to seduce a senator to find out what's going on with the president. I think that's how they find out that Zartan is posing as the president,
Hmm.
and they're trying to figure out where the real president is. It, it's kind of loosely based on a arc. I was on the Joe and Joe podcast and discussed this arc of the comic in sheep's clothing, where the Cobra Commander actually uses Zartan's tech to pose as the president's chief of staff, and sort of he gets the president, which there's a little bit of like, is this supposed to be President Bush? because because it's like the president like falls for what Cobra Commander's up to, and he gets the president to create the Phoenix Guard, which is a bunch of Cobra operatives posing as like counter terrorists. So the villain Firefly, who is part of like the Snake Eyes Storm Shadow triangle, is rebranded Snake Eater. Zorana, who's one of the Dreadnoughts, she's actually Zartan's little sister, and she has a twin brother named Xandar. They're like a pair of twins who are younger than Zartan. But she's rebranded Friday, and then Copperhead is High Tide, who's like the Cobra's naval guy. And
Man,
so they're basically,
I'm gonna be honest. All the name changes and everything make this so hard to follow.
oh yeah, well it's like it's just for an arc because pretending to be good guys. It's sort of like the original Thunderbolts, where it's like Baron Zemo and a team of supervillains posing as heroes. And that's what Joe Slapstick, host of John Joe, compared it to. Because I was thinking Dark Avengers, like this was Dark Avengers. Joe was like, actually Thunderbolts predated both.
Yeah, I will say I'm pretty sure Dark Avengers is relatively recent.
Yeah, it
From
was 2009.
yeah, I actually
And,
remember when that okay Marvel Puzzle Quest. Okay,
oh,
there's a weird video game universe of interconnected games, loosely interconnected from the early 2010s era, that started with a
yes.
Facebook game called Marvel Avengers Assemble. And
Oh, yes, you mean Avengers Alliance,
yes,
right?
Avengers Assemble, thank you, yes.
Yes, I
Um,
played that.
it was really good.
Yeah,
I'm sad I can't
yeah,
play it anymore, but
yeah. My dad, brother, and
there's
I, we all played that, and we would like loan each other like items in the Avengers Assemble and the Avengers
there's a
Alliance game.
there's a story MacGuffin that is used as a reasoning in the mechanics of the video games for why you can level up and upgrade your characters, which already have pre-established power levels and whatnot. And it's called
Hmm.
Isotope 8 or ISO 8. And so any
Yes.
game that uses ISO 8 as its power up system is technically in the same universe. So it's like Avengers Alliance and then some other fucking game and then Puzzle Quest, which they also
Mm.
reference ISO 8 and stuff like that. And they had a Dark
Mm.
Avengers storyline in that game. So
Yes.
that was actually how I
Also,
discovered Dark Avengers.
yeah, I discovered it because, like, when I was in the sixth grade back in like 2009, I discovered a website called Comic Vine, which is basically this database of like comic book characters, comic books. And then I think at that year they also started putting comic book movies and more recently comic book shows also. So I had like looked at a Norman Osborn's entry and saw Iron Patriot as like the, default image. And that's when I sort of discovered that they're doing this Dark Avengers story at the time, which was part of a larger story, The Dark Reign, where like Norman Osborn, I think he's the Secretary of State, I want to say, because he sort of rehabilitated his image. And so everyone thinks he's a good guy. And so he forms his new Avengers team, which is all like supervillains posing as Avengers.
Was he
And
not the
so that,
president in that?
no, I think he was because I think in Shadowland, Daredevil's, because that's when Daredevil's possessed by the beast. He's like, this is the same country that decided it was okay for Norman Osborn to run the State Department or something like that. Yeah, I thought it was president because President Luthor was in my brain when I first heard about that. But no, it's like Secretary of State or Defense. But
Okay.
basically, he gets, yeah, one of those positions where he'd get oversight over something like S.H.I.E.L.D. And then
Man,
he basically is,
Marvel sure likes to make supervillains be part of the government. Red Skull was
yes,
the Secretary of State for a while, and I wonder
he was part of the government twice,
why do
twice
they
because there
always
was,
gotta make comic books so political?
yes, let's see, Red Skull was Mr. Smith in like the late 80s, who was part of the government. And then in like the late 2000s, there's Del Rusk, who is also Red Skull, posing as a member of the government. Lex Luthor was the president. Cobra Commander was the chief of staff of the White House. So it's like, why are
Loki
comics so political?
Loki was running for
Mm,
president, so
yes, yes.
man, almost like there's some kind of
Cobra had,
commentary said.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then one of the G.I. Joe Transformers crossovers, they set it in, it was the Dreamwave era of Transformers comics, but for a crossover, Dreamwave could use G.I. Joe is because Devil's Due was at G.I. Joe had the Devil's Due had the G.I. Joe license in the early and mid 2000s. Dreamwave had the Transformers license, but both companies could use the other franchise only for crossovers. So the Dreamwave crossover was Transformers G.I. Joe, Heroes Rise, and no, Tyrants Rise, Heroes Are Reborn. And it's set in World War II, and basically Cobra, they're the Nazis. They're running concentration camps,
I'm not gonna lie,
conquering Europe.
with how that line of dialogue was going, I was thinking you were going to say that Megatron ran for president.
No, no, no. Well, I guess, trying to think if he, no, Starscream had political ambitions in one of the Transformers comics.
For Earth?
Granted, it was not for Earth. It was still for
Oh,
Cybertron, but
okay.
still. But
I
yeah,
was gonna
I
say,
think
it'd
the
be so
IDW,
crazy. Can you just imagine this giant transformer, this like 20-foot tall being wearing like a tie
yeah,
and saying like, "My fellow Americans."
yeah, no, that would be hilarious. But I think there was All Hail Megatron, but he wasn't a politician. He just straight up conquered Earth, and the Autobots had to liberate Earth. That was like one of the first IDW stories they did with the Transformers comics. And it was before they actually got the G.I. Joe license because Dreamwave went under and IDW had picked up Transformers and Ninja Turtles from what remained of Dreamwave before it went completely bankrupt. Meanwhile, Devil Suit was still operational. And so they were still doing G.I. Joe comics. Hasbro was like, we want Transformers and G.I. Joe under the same roof. So they terminated Devil's Due's claim on the license and it became part of IDW. And so basically IDW had the Transformers and G.I. Joe license and they had started their own lines. And then in 2010, they reached out to Simon Furman and Larry Hama was like, do you want to continue your lines you were doing for Marvel? So Transformers Regeneration 1 started its numbering with 80 because, no, 81 because the Marvel run ended with issue 80 because Marvel wanted to do Transformers Generation 2, which was also written by Simon Furman. And then G.I. Joe lasted to 155. So Transformers Regeneration 1 has like a free comic book day special, issue 80 and a half. And then from there, issue 81. Same thing with G.I. Joe Real American Hero, issue 155 and a half. And then we continue with 156 to 300. And then Hasbro terminates the license for IDW. Image picks up G.I. Joe. And then G.I. Joe 301 from now is the Image run. Still written by Larry Hama. He's been writing this comic since 1982. Gotta give the man his roses.
Yeah,
And he cameoed in the Snake Eyes movie.
really. Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
I always
Yes,
love
which
it
is like
whenever,
one of the things like comic book creators cameo in
yeah, no,
movies and whatnot.
well, not just comic book
Mm.
creators, but like whenever like majorly influential people in a franchise, like you said, get their flowers, that like they get mentioned or get to cameo. Like
Mm-hmm.
when
Yeah.
Amy Jo Johnson and Jason David Frank got to appear at the end of the 2017 Power Rangers movie. That made me so happy because
Mm.
I was like, yeah, they're a huge part of the history. You know, it's really
Yes.
cool to see that they
Yes.
got to show up.
Yeah, I haven't, I've been meaning
With
to like
like
check out
Nolan
some
North,
Power Rangers because, yeah. Oh,
when
Nolan
Nolan
North
North
in the
actually
Uncharted
appeared.
movie?
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Sorry, what were you saying about Power Rangers?
Yeah, I've been listening to you and Jordan talk about it. I was like, maybe I got to check out the Power Ranger stuff because I've listened to so many. Because it's one of those franchises where it's just like there's so much there. It's like I had seen some of it growing up. Because I was growing up in the 2000s era, so I'd seen some of it on like Nickelodeon and ABC Kids. It's like this is kind of cool, but it's like I mostly got swept up with The Batman on Kids WB, Legion of Superheroes, Spectacular Spider-Man,
Yeah,
Transformers Energon, Cybertron, Armada, G.I. Joe Sigma 6, and the 2000s TMNT cartoon.
yeah. It
So
was
I was
definitely a good
going,
era for animation, so I don't blame you
mm,
for not
yes,
gravitating towards one of the live action shows. Especially
yes,
because Power Rangers is an extremely hit or miss kind of franchise where you gotta
yes,
you gotta pick the right
ex-
sub series to be able to
yes,
get invested in it. I
mhm,
would say I mean, if you've been listening to the episodes, I'm sure you've already heard a lot of my opinions about the series. I would
Yeah,
say
yeah.
if you like a little bit more grit to like be able to take it a little bit more seriously to start, RPM is a
Mm-hmm.
fantastic choice,
Mm-hmm.
especially because it's not really tied into previous series. It's its own continuity for the most
Yeah,
part. So RPM is really good. Time Force, all time great. That's a fantastic one if you want to step into it. There's a lot of really good ones. Again, we do our rankings at the end of every episode, so you can
yeah,
just hear what I think is
yeah,
really good.
yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for the recommendation. I'll write it down. RPM. So
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Back to GI Joe.
Yes. Sorry, we're gonna say that a lot.
Yeah. Well, and so let's see. I was giving you the spiel of the Dreadnought, which there are people who really love the Dreadnoughts. Like I use Histank, which is like a GI Joe fan site, and one of the users is the Dreadnoughts twins because their favorite characters are Xandar and Zorana, who are the twin siblings of Zartan.
Hmm.
And Xandar was actually in the second live action movie because Xandar's whole spiel is he can blend in with the crowd. And so I actually think this was a clever thing they did with him was he's one of the Secret Service guys who's protecting the president, which in that movie, Zartan's posing as the president. So, and it, because the president is played by Jonathan Pryce, it, with that premise, Jonathan Pryce just goes all in. He's like, he knows he's in a bad movie, so he's just fucking around to see what he can get away with. And so it's really fun just to watch him go all in and be zany as like the supervillain posing as the president. But Xandar is like one of the Secret Service guys, and I didn't catch that until I rewatched it in Nice to See You. And he's just walking beside the president as one of the Secret Service guys. And so it's like, oh, Xandar is just a Secret Service guy because his shtick is he can blend in with the crowd and get away and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, that's a really clever usage of that character. It's just, I wish the entire movie was that clever.
Yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about. It feels like there's a lot of movies that they they breach, like they just start to be on the precipice of like, wow, this is really smart and well written and good, and then you watch the rest of it and it's just like, oh,
Like so many of the Michael Bay Transformers, I think maybe like
yeah.
the first three.
Every once in a while, you see a little moment in one of those movies where you're like, oh, okay, maybe the rest of the movie will be good. It's not.
Yeah. We didn't get a good live action Transformers movie until Bumblebee,
Yeah, we were
which
just
is
talking
like,
about that in the
it took,
Discord channel.
yeah. It's like, have you actually seen it in its entirety, or have you still just seen the opening scene on
I,
Cybertron?
I am a fake fan. I've still only seen the opening sequence. I know I should give it a chance. It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to
You
let
were burnt
go.
so many times by the 5 movies that came before it.
I have, I gave it three chances. I watched the first Transformers movie. I'm like, that's not what Transformers should be. But I guess it wasn't the most terrible thing in the world, other than Bumblebee pissing on that one guy. And then I watched the second movie. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is the worst thing in
Hey,
the
yo,
world.
Mudflap, what do we do with this shrimp taco?
I hate the
Which,
second one so much. It's so fucking terrible. And then I was like,
and
maybe
it
they
didn't
could
help
go.
that it was written during a writer's strike, but
Yeah,
even then, it's like, it's still one, Lorenzo Di Bonaventura has mishandled both Transformers and G.I. Joe
yeah,
on the film side. On top of that, he's the guy who decided, let's give Michael Bay 5 Transformers movies. And so you're paired with a guy who doesn't understand Transformers or G.I. Joe, the director of movies like Pearl Harbor, and you basically get disasters. And then you get Travis Knight, who worked on films like Coraline and Paranormal. It's like, oh, this guy directed a good Transformers movie.
I
What do you know? Someone who knows what he's doing finally delivered on what the director of Pearl Harbor couldn't for 5 movies.
yeah, I look. all I know is that I watched those first two. I was like, this is really bad. And I was like, I don't know, maybe the third one will bring it home. And
Mm.
and then I think I watched the first half hour and then I gave up because it's like 20 minutes of Sam farting around trying to worried about getting cucked with his new British girlfriend. And
Oh
then
yes, because
and
Megan
then
Fox compared Michael Bay to Hitler.
and then uh, Optimus just kills Megatron unceremoniously in like the first fight
Yes.
in the movie. I was just like, this shit
Wait,
sucks.
no, Optimus doesn't kill Megatron until the end of it. I think.
No, wait, am I thinking of the second movie where there's a
Oh,
scene he
I think
murders.
Megatron. Oh, are you thinking of when he tears Grinder's face in half
No,
and
I'm
he's like,
thinking of he's fighting two Decepticons in a forest. I think it's Megatron and
that's the
Starscream,
second
right?
movie.
Is
He
okay.
fights Megatron, Starscream, and Grinder in the second movie. He tears Grinder's face in half, and then Megatron sneaks up on him and kills him. Kills Optimus.
Is that what happened? I could have sworn I remembered something where like I don't know. Look, it all blends together. It's just a mess of
Yeah,
no CGI
yes,
metal
I mean,
and Sam
yeah,
being horny. So
yeah. Sam being a Shia LaBeouf. No, 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 no. Optimus, I'll kill you, I'll kill you, I'll kill
yeah.
you.
Oh God, what a fucking travesty. That is not my option.
And like, well, even Peter Cullen, who's been voicing Optimus Prime since the Marvel cartoon, was like, when I read these lines in these movies where Optimus Prime says, "We will kill them all," I'm like, I don't want to say this. This isn't Optimus. And he's like, "You're gonna say it because it's my movie." I was like, "Fine, I'll say it, but it's still not Optimus."
Damn. Man, like some directors need to be knocked off their fucking high horse and know that like, hey, if this is a dude that's been working as this character for like decades, you should probably listen to him if he tells you, hey, that's out of character.
Well, yes. Also, did you know that Peter Cullen modeled Optimus Prime after his brother?
Really?
Yes, so his brother was a military man, which this will bring us back to G.I. Joe, but his brother served in the military, and Peter was auditioning for the part of Optimus Prime with Marvel Productions in Sunbow. And so he's like, I'm going to play a hero. He's a truck, but he transforms into this leader of heroes. And Larry Cullen, Peter's brother, is like, Peter, if you're going to be a hero, be a real hero, not one of those pretender types. Be one who has the courage to be gentle. And that's where Peter Cullen got the inspiration for the voice of Optimus Prime, was that speech Larry Cullen gave to him. And so the have the courage to be gentle is one of the things that really resonated with Peter Cullen. So when Roberto Orci and Michael Bay are like, this character's going to say, I'll kill you a million times in this movie, it's like, that's out of character. You should have the courage to be gentle, not
Yeah.
violent and murderous and all the Michael Bay dick writers will say, but it's realistic for him to be like that because he was in war, so he should be violent. They deserve it. They deserve to
Okay.
have their faces
Real
ripped out.
quick.
They're bad guys.
The it's realistic though argument really falls on deaf ears when you're talking about how to personify a giant robot from an alien planet.
Yes, that's what I keep pointing out to these idiots. It's like, he's a giant alien robot from outer space. There's nothing realistic about him. So why should
You're
he,
worried
why
about
would it,
racism in a Transformers movie.
yes. And I'm so glad that Oliver Grayson isn't invincible, where he's like, they deserve it. It's like, this shows how childish, like the people who dick ride the Michael Bay Optimus Prime, the Zack Snyder Batman, or even the Tim Burton Batman, where it's like, they should kill. It's better for Batman to kill the Joker by strapping him to a gargoyle, or it's better for Batman to kill KG Beast by shooting his flamethrower and all that. It's like, that's not Batman. It's not Optimus Prime to just yell, I'll kill you a million times.
I will say, I recently had a little bit of my superhero love tested. Okay, I bring it up literally all the time. I'm a communist. I'm very
Yeah.
not a big fan of like the whole capitalism,
Yes.
dwindling our economy to nothing. Given that I live here,
Hmm.
but so
Yes. We live in a late stage neoliberal communist, capitalist nightmare.
yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely not communist. I wish, but
Yeah, no,
so
no.
so
That's a
it's
slip of the tongue.
so So somebody, I saw like a video essay. It was probably by like implicitly pretentious or someone. I can't remember, but they were talking about how like superheroes are cool, but fundamentally they represent the idea of not the Ubermensch, but it was like what what was it that he said? It was like specific people being above the fray of everyone else, and therefore
Oh, like a meritocracy kind of
yeah,
thing?
sort of like a meritocracy, right? The idea of like they're the
Yeah.
best of the best and they should represent us. Um, but
Hmm.
as a result, we tend to idolize them. And what's great
Yes.
is that a lot of superhero movies, even like Brave New World to a degree, like they do tackle that. Like, hey, maybe we shouldn't
Hmm.
idolize Steve Rogers. He was a great person, but like the
Hmm.
or even
He
things
was
like
only.
My Hero Academia actually tackles this topic really well. The fact that all of
Hmm.
society decided to put all of their burdens on the shoulders of All Might, who is a
Hmm.
singular guy who has his own flaws. And as soon as
Yes.
he had to retire, society fucking crumbled because people
Hmm.
no longer knew how to take care of themselves and
Yeah.
um, pointing out the flaws of that sort of thing. So, like, it's kind of hard being both a hey, all people should work together while also being like, but superheroes are really cool. Um,
Yes, it's like the dilemma of being like a communist and a nerd at the same time. It's like I really love Batman, but it's like there's no way a billionaire would actually do that for his city or his people.
yeah,
It's like no way he would protect his people and also fund like charities and help rehabilitate criminals with his own wealth. It's like it's a
that's how
cool
billionaires.
story for fiction.
That's how billionaires
Yes.
definitely should be, but unfortunately, we get Elon Musk instead of Bruce Wayne because we live in the worst timeline. But
Yes. As a federal worker, I really hate Elon Musk.
But what I was getting at with all that is that whenever people are like heroes should kill, it's like, hey, I need you to understand if you're wanting to go the realism route, quote unquote, that it would be
Mhm.
fucking terrifying. The idea of vigilantes that could easily snap you like a twig with two fingers, like a Superman or a Batman or
Mhm.
whatever, being able to get away with punitive justice with no repercussions. Like cops
Yes.
are bad. Now imagine if a cop
Mhm.
also could throw a car at you and then still not get arrested when he murders unarmed people.
Yes.
Like
Like
that
I'm
would
thinking of
be
like
the worst. We
I'm
don't
thinking of
want
Oliver versus the Mueller twins, where he just flies through one of them and then he punches another in the head and explodes its head. It's like
yeah,
this
we
is a
we should not desire superheroes to be killing willy nilly because the only thing that makes superheroes even remotely appealing is that they try and do the right thing.
yes. Which one of the things I like about GI Joe is it does that same kind of thing. Like I'll just mention this example from the Devil's Due era. This kind of tails back to something from the Marvel era, but there's a character on the cover side called Overkill, who was one of the first Saw Vipers, and he
I know,
kills
okay, yeah,
three
I know
Joes
who
who
that
were
is because
prisoners. So
he was made by Stan Lee and Rob Liefeld on
no,
a.
no, you're thinking of Overt Kill, who is a Spawn villain.
You know what? You're right. I am because they originally called him Overkill and then changed his name.
Yes, yes, because there's a Guardians of the Galaxy character also named Overkill, and so, it,
Jesus.
but he the GI Joe Overkill was a Saw Viper, and he killed three Joes who were in Cobra custody. So these were POWs, W's, and he's like he kills them as basically committing war crimes. But basically that doing that has like haunted him for the rest of his life. So in the Devil's Due comics, he pleads with Snake Eyes to kill him, and Snake Eyes he doesn't speak, but he just refuses to kill him because this is needless bloodshed, and he basically spares him because it's like it's better to just spare this guy and make him a keep him prisoner than to just kill him on a whim.
Right.
So it's like it's one of those things that because I always think of G.I. Joe as like superhero fiction meets kind of like military action. So these are like superhero soldiers where they have these unique designs of personality. There's a reason Snake Eyes is so iconic. It's because his design resonates, but it's like there's still like a militaristic element. They're still fighting a war with a terrorist organization. A
Right.
terrorist organization that has a sovereign nation that's an island and also has camps set up in towns called Springfield, which in the G.I. Joe universe, it's like Cobra towns where the population is brainwashed. So they turn a blind eye to what Cobra's doing beneath their town and all
Yeah. I think I'll
that. So
say that
yeah.
what really does make this whole thing more appealing for me from what you're describing is again the fact that they seem to take a lot. I mean, clearly from the history that you told me, like they actually have strong superhero roots. So
Yes.
taking a lot of inspiration from that in that like we're going to focus more on the heroic aspect with it being military themed rather than it being a military series with superhero themes, which I feel like would be a big distinction because um,
Yeah.
for anyone who might not understand where I'm coming from with my anti-military stuff, um, if you're raised in America, you are told that the military they're fighting for freedom and to protect us, but
Mm.
realistically, politicians are bad and they control the military. And what the military tends
Well,
to stand
yes.
for is specific interests, not the interest of the American people, but the interest of certain billionaires who want to make more money. You look at things like the war in Iraq. The excuse of 9/11 was,
Mm.
hey, these are terrorists and we got to stop them. But really, the war was fought for oil to make people
Yes.
money, and it was just a nice
Mm.
sounding excuse. And when you think of like, okay, this is a massive amount of people that we know military training. They say you got to break them down so you can build them back up, which literally means
Mm.
essentially brainwashing someone, right? So that they'll
Yeah.
follow orders, they won't have a personality to defy you. You get massive
Mm.
amounts of these people that are suggestible, who are heavily armed. They go into other countries. Like if you listen to actual stories from veterans or from people who are conscientious objectors, like listen to the song "Hero of War" by Rise Against, where he describes.
Oh, I love that song. I
Yeah,
thank you for. I love that band, and that's one of my favorite songs by that band.
Rise Against is so good. Don't listen to Hero of War
Mm.
unless you're ready to cry because it is upsetting.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it's also Tim McElrath has such a beautiful voice where it's like, particularly in that song, he's singing in like a more mellow, like
it's like
depressing, like
Warren.
kind of, yes. Whereas like something like, we give it all,
Yeah.
the measure.
But yeah, where he describes things like, yeah, we saw a guy who intelligence wanted to interrogate, so we ripped him away from his family, and then we stripped him and pissed in his hands, and um,
Yes, yes.
but, which, by the way, I want to point out, humiliating people is a war crime. It's against the Geneva
Yeah.
Convention, but we do it all the time. You hear stories like,
Mm.
yeah, we killed this guy and raped his wife, and
Hmm.
uh, or if you even look at like some of the stuff from the IDF where they would like visit the bombed out homes and like make TikToks playing on a dead guy's guitar and stuff like that. Like the,
Yeah.
the military has a lot of fucked up shit, and um, it's why whenever like I see like I worked at Hardee's for like 7 months last year,
Mm.
and it was so pro military, and I hated it. And I actually
Hmm.
remember getting into a conversation with someone. I was like, look, I don't immediately see someone in uniform and go, "Wow, sir, thank you for your service," because I don't know that guy.
Hmm.
Like, I don't just see the
Well, yeah.
uniform; I see there's a person wearing it, and any person can be good or bad, and unfortunately, a lot of military
Yes.
people are bad. So like that's part
Yeah.
of why I never really got into GI Joe, but um,
Hmm.
hearing that
Yeah.
like that they're less of a realistic reflection of what the military is and more like an idealized version of what they should be. Kind of like how we mentioned, no billionaire is
Should
doing
be.
Batman, but they should be.
Hmm.
Or maybe not
Yes.
so much going out and punching people, but like the Bruce Wayne of stuff of constantly devoting his time and money to charities and trying to make the world a better
Yes.
place in whatever way he can.
Yeah.
It would be wonderful if it was like that. And
Hmm.
you've definitely given me a new perspective and a new appreciation for GI Joe.
Well, I'll also bring up some like factions from G.I. Joe. So there's this group called the Jugglers, which are like the chicken hawks. They're like the politicians and generals at the higher levels of government who
Right?
basically want to use G.I. Joe and the military for their own personal gain. And so like Hawk and Joe Colton and Flag are always at odds with the Jugglers because they just want to use G.I. Joe as gangsters for capitalism, and they're always looking for some reason to either get rid of GI Joe and replace it, or replace its leadership so it's more malleable to their interests. And this was a group Larry Hama came up with in the GI Joe comic. I don't think they ever appeared in the cartoon, but the cartoon is so wacky they'd probably feel out of place,
I was gonna
especially
say
with stuff like
I can't
Cobra Law.
imagine him being in it, honestly.
Yeah, especially with like Cobra Law. I don't know if you ever seen the GI Joe movie from 1987. But
No.
Cobra Law is like the secret society of snake people, which in the cartoon, they created Cobra because Cobra Commander is from that group. And so he was sent to the circus world to form Cobra to prepare it for Cobra Law's takeover, which sounds an awful lot like Invincible with the Viltrumites, where they send a Viltrumite to Earth to prepare it for the takeover of the Viltrum Empire,
I'm
which
sorry. I'm just reeling from the fact that that's a real life conspiracy that like there's secret snake people that are trying to
lizard
create.
people.
Yeah. Oh
Yes.
my god.
Yes, but yeah, Globulus, Nemesis, Enforcer, which is now Nemesis Immortal, and Pythona are like the three leaders of Cobra Law. And Cobra Commander in the cartoon was their messenger. And in the new G.I. Joe comics by Joshua Williamson, Cobra Commander is a human who discovers Cobra Law, and he also discovers Megatron, and he takes him to Cobra Law to experiment on them. And then his like journey to the surface to form Cobra is because he wants to harness Energon and use it for weapons to take over the world for himself. So he actually betrays Cobra Law, and he kills Nemesis Immortal in a fight in the Cobra Commander series. And he brings him to Destro, Mars Industries, and the Iron Grenadiers, who get folded over for his own like financial gains because he runs a weapons manufacturing company called Mars Industries, and the Iron Grenadiers are his private army to advance his profit interests. And he's also Scottish, and so basically Destro works with Cobra, and I think he's effectively an actual fully fledged member, but he's not in it for what Cobra Commander wants. He's just in it for profit. And he also has this sense of honor where like when Joes die, he still feels a need to go pay his respects to fallen Joes, even though they were his enemies, because it's like he was raised to basically be this honorable man, even though he's still one of the bad guys. So it's one of those things where it's like, I really like this character because of like the dimension Larry Hama and then later like Josh Blaylock, Joe Casey, and Dan Waters and Joshua Williamson give this character.
Yeah. That sounds pretty cool. I do say,
Also,
oh, what was that?
yeah, also there's a group called the October Guard, which are the Russian GI Joes, which when they're first introduced, they're at odds with the Joes, but then when Cobra comes into play, the Joes and the October Guard basically decide we both want like the same thing. We want to stop this terrorist threat. We're just at odds because our countries are at odds. So let's work together to stop Cobra. And so Colonel Brekov, who's the leader of the October Guard, is like, yes, we should do that. Because at the end of the day, we don't want Cobra taking over the world and installing this fascist order, even though our countries are at hegemonic odds because of the Cold War. So they actually work with the October Guard to stop Cobra. And the October Guard is basically, they're like, sort of like like sometimes antagonistic, sometimes allies, but it's simply for hegemonic reasons. They're not evil. They're still, to some extent, good guys, but they're from Russia. And so that Russia's interests being at odds with America's will put the Joes and the October Guard at odds. So it's another one of those layers of nuance, particularly in the Cold War that Larry brought to the G.I. Joe comics. And it's one of the reasons people like Josh Blaylock, who went on to write G.I. Joe comics, and I think Josh might even agree with this, the G.I. Joe comic was actually better than the cartoon. Because one, it would kill characters. Two, it would delve into these more nuanced stories of wartime with more personalized stories to actually humanize American soldiers, but still recognize that there are still people in the upper echelons of government who will use good people to do bad things. And the G.I. Joes basically have to recognize we don't want to do what the jugglers want us to do. We've got to do the right thing.
I'm really glad that they had that sort of story beat in there because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's a good bit of commentary in there. I do unfortunately have to let you know that we do have to wrap up
Mm-hmm.
because it's very clear that uh, you could talk about this all day, and as much as I'd
Yeah,
love
well, I guess we might have to do a separate episode just about Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow because there's a whole bit of lore there that's just like
you know what, I wouldn't
it's
be against that.
like you yeah,
I,
it's
I
sort of like
wouldn't
how
be
you've
against that.
already done a Transformers episode, but there's like so much there with just Optimus Prime alone that he could get his own episode, Megatron, the Autobots and Decepticon teams, as well as
Yeah,
like the G.I. Joe actual team and the Cobra team and other characters in the G.I. Joe world, where it's like there's so much there, they would warrant their own episodes.
yeah, yeah,
But
definitely.
this was more so G.I. Joe as a franchise,
Yeah, and you know what?
the history.
I will say I genuinely learned a lot.
Yeah,
Scotty, thank you so much for coming. It was really cool to get to have this conversation with you. Um,
yes.
is there any kind of
And
like
now
social
you'll,
media? Huh?
uh, yeah, I do have a Twitter. I almost never use it now because of Elon, but you can still find me there. I'll occasionally check it. Scotty Sackham 97. And it's also my same Threads username. I'm also on Blue Sky. But if you want to like for more of my opinions of like comics and video games or even like toys, you can find me on Comic Vine at Scotty Hawkeye. That's also my Giant Bomb username. I write comic book reviews and video game reviews and movie reviews there. And His Tank TF World 2005 and Toy Art, also Scotty Hawkeye. I post a lot of like toy pictures and collection shots there if you want to find me there.
Awesome.
And
Sounds great.
I also edit wikis on Comic Vine and Giant Bomb. I recently added pictures of Brit and Tech Jacket from the new Invincible episode to their image galleries. I still need to edit like an entry for Brit was Invincible, Tech Jacket was an Invincible,
All right, cool.
which,
Um,
yeah. I'm
yeah.
also in Blue's Discord.
He is. And speaking of, you should check out the Cape Corner Discord. You can keep up to date with the newest episodes that come out as they come out, and you can also, just interact with the other members of the community. It's pretty cool, and you can suggest episodes. If you want to hear us talk about an episode, or you want to be a part of an episode, clearly I'm cool with that. So, um,
Yeah,
uh, I don't really plug my social media anymore because like it really has nothing to
yeah,
do with this podcast, to be honest. But
yeah.
we are,
Basically,
yeah, it's just
join the
like that.
Discord.
But
Yeah.
we are part of the Holopods Podcast Network. It's the Phantom Optimist, as we mentioned, the SJW Comic Book Club, True Believers, a comic book podcast, and Movies to Watch Before You Die. So go check them out. They're all really cool. And I think that's going to about do it. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Uh, Now you know more about G.I. Joe, and
And
knowing
knowing is
is
half the
half the
battle.
battle.
You know what? That's good. I'm gonna Uh, but I was gonna say I was gonna cut out the bit and let us end on that, but I can't because we're doing a different format. Shit.
Yeah, I guess Podbean, it's still going to let us ramble on a bit.
Yeah.
I
All
guess if
right.
you really want to do an episode about Snake Eyes, just the character and sort of the lore about that, I'm open to do it because there's so much, particularly with his origin there, that's like, there's a whole like conspiracy about the Hard Master and the Arashikage clan, which is where Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow come from.
Yeah, we can definitely do that
That's what I
with
meant.
people, but I'm
Yeah.
so just gonna end the episode right now. So I'm gonna say,
Mhm.
everybody, thank you for listening. Stay strong, stay true to yourselves, and remember, we can all be real American heroes.
Heroes,
With
G.I. Joe is here.